Going live, you're live. Hello, everybody. Mikey, I think we're live.
Oh, awesome. I can't see it yet, but I'm on the mute button ready to mute you on there.
Hello,
Yes,
you glorious toucans. For those of you who don't know, my name's Jan, and over here in the ether somewhere is Mikey. We're doing this a little bit differently. Mikey is not hosting this one. I'm hosting this one because we're going to be focusing so much on techniques in Godot that it makes sense not to deal with Discord's downscaling things to 720p, which means that Mikey is a disembodied ghosty voice.
Yes.
But before we go, how is everybody?
Mikey, I'm very well.
Mikey, you've had a very stressful day.
Well, stressful week. So some of you will know, if you tuned in a couple of weeks ago, that I had a hard drive failure. Turns out that on one of those hard drive failures was my SQL database for all of my videos.
Mm-hmm.
And those are a nightmare to recover. I'm almost back, but I have lost a lot of edits, unfortunately. Yep. But some of the raw videos are all out there. The rest, I've just got to suck it up and do better a backup in future.
I remember there was a Windows backup, I want to say 2.5 years ago. Not backup, update. And I lost all of my videos. I was halfway through Discovering Godot. I lost all the board game course, everything.
It was that Windows update that actually wiped people's computers, and
just
you were
my drive.
You were a casualty of that.
Oh, did not like that. But that's not what we're talking about. Today we are proud partners, well, in fact, all month, we're proud partners of the Go Godot Jam, or Go Godot Game Jam. It's fun to say, Go Godot Jam. So I want to play the little sting. Can I play the sting?
Go on then.
Let me go bibbidi, and then press. Okay, so the Go Godot Jam, which is starting, well, we're part of the festival now, and we're partnered with a whole bunch of very creative people, many of whom already work in Godot, some work in Unreal, are interested in Godot, and it's all kinds of exciting. And today we want to talk about 3D in Godot, because Mikey.
Wait, what? You're telling me Godot?
Yeah. Did you know that Unreal can do 3D? No. Yeah, Godot could do 3D. So there's a few things that you want to look at when you're working at 3D. Some of it is just little gotchas that you might not be aware of straight away. Some of it's little techniques to make things faster. And some of it is just things you might not know Godot can do. So why don't we start with a thing. Let me open up my Godot. Well, let's just demonstrate what Godot can do. I want to point out I haven't played this game since, I want to say, November. So I'm just going to fire this up. If my computer will let me do it. There we go. And let's do that. Ha 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 ha. So you should be able to see me. Okay, so let's open Mag Racer.
I love this game.
I love this game too. Take a while because it's quite a big game. Okay. So Mag Racer is a physics 3D based racer. How's the volume, by the way?
I can hear you fine, but obviously I'm not listening to the stream. Let me turn that up.
Yeah. Just ask everyone else. How's the volume? Can you hear me over the and Mikey over the game?
I'll turn it down just a little.
Turn it down just a little. Okay. There we go. What's the point of having an options menu if you're not going to use it? Let's pick a team. How about
on the Paladin Road Therm.
Let's go with Therm. I'm feeling pretty goth tonight. Okay. So, can Godot do 3D? This is a pre-launch alpha that we did for a Kickstarter that didn't fund, unfortunately, for a course we were doing. And we kind of want to make Wipeout, but we messed it up. So I'm going to hit the wall a lot.
3, 2, 1, go!
Nice. Yes. Very challenging, this game, because it's a physics-based racer.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I forgot how Wipeout actually played, which is the camera is kind of glued to the track. Instead, we simulated magnetic repulsion at 700 kilometers an hour, which turns out is really hard to control. It's a speed bumps on a bobsled run.
Apparently, you're a little quiet, Jan.
What if I come over here? La, 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 la. Help! Help! Okay, so this game is a combination of months of work, right? And we made a lot of mistakes on the way. We did a lot of discovering. Like it's really like most of the games, most of the alphas we make is a prototype. It's us playing, seeing what we can do, me flying off the edge of the course. But there's a lot going on here, right? There's a lot of screen effects. There's a little bit of slowdown there. Like, for an alpha, I'm pretty happy with this. So clearly, we can do 3D. So, let's look at some of the techniques you can use. And one of the ones I want to start with... By the way, if you guys have any questions or comments or things, feel free. I'm going to get rid of my face. I mean, yeah, we'll keep that sentence. That's fine. Now let's open Godot. I'm going to make a new project. Go Godot Jam 3D thing. Great. Yeah, you can go there. Okay. Okay. When you're making stuff in 3D, things you want to think about. First, if I make a scene, let's make a 3D scene, and I'm going to call this level. If I put something in the world, let's put in a mesh instance, just so we have something to look at. And I make a nice cube with no material, and I run this. Let's just give it a default. Oh, I've got to save it, haven't I? Level. Fine. First, I'm going to save it, then I can run it. I know how to use Godot. Okay.
Don't worry. Seasoned professionals always make the clumsiest mistakes.
I can't see anything, right? Now, if you're working in 2D, this is a bit of a trip. But that's because in 2D, if I make a 2D scene and I just put in a sprite, just drop that in there, and I'm going to just run this scene, we can see stuff. And the reason is, if you don't put a camera in 2D, it'll just go with the default top-down view or default side view, whatever this default view is. But in 3D, we can't do that, so you must add a camera. When you're doing that, remember that the Z-axis, or Z-axis, this blue, is your 4D backwards one. So traditionally, if I'm moving this cube forward, I'll be moving it this way. So right now, we're in front of the cube, looking at the cube. And I'm just going to move the camera back. And I'm going to make it current. If there's only one camera in the scene, you don't have to worry too much about that. And I can press preview. That's what I'm going to see. So now when I run this scene, we can now see the world. So that's the very first thing that trips people up. You make yourself a little 3D scene, and that's not going to work. Okay, so far, so good. Let's get rid of you. Because I want to talk a little bit about something that Godot does that's really cool for certain things, and that's CSG meshes. Mikey, you were saying that it's analogous, and it's like something in Unreal, but I forgot what it's called.
I think they're called BSPs, binary space partitions.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a CSG combiner. And as a child of CSG combiner, I'm going to put a CSG box. And let's give that a width of 10, a height of 5, and a depth of 1. All of these are in meters, so if you're not used to working in Godot, that's 10 meters by 5 meters by 1. Great, so far so good. Now CSGs are great for a number of reasons. One, I can use collision, and I've got access to all the collision layers and collision masks. Two, if I'm using a combiner, I can add another one of these in. Let's put in a cylinder, and let's put you on snap and just rotate you by 90 degrees, and just going to make you a bit bigger. La 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 la. Great. And I'm going to switch this from union to subtraction. And what's nice about this is that this can work at runtime, right? So we can change this at runtime. However, there are certain things you can't do. If you want to update this and update the collision, you're going to have to, at runtime, disable and re-enable the collision, which might pause your game. So just be aware of that. However, this is a really great way of getting your level white box, of laying out basic stuff. So if you want to make a test level, and you don't yet have a bunch of assets made, and you don't want to mess around with CSGs, this is a fantastic way of getting some stuff done. When we made MagRacer, a lot of the early blockouts and so on were these CSGs. Okay.
For those that are interested, by the way, I'm going to go and share in the chat in a few seconds MagRacer itself. So if you want to pick up the game and play it.
Thank you, Mikey. All right, so this is all very cool. So I can go into my CSG box and let's say give that a material, which is right here, new spatial. And let's give that an albedo. It's going to be a nice red color. And you'll notice that the geometry is kind of complaining. That's because we're doing a Boolean operation and meshes don't like it. So just tweak it a little bit. And you'll notice the inside is white. However, trip up number 2. I have put in this nice red color. This is not red. Often, well, okay, this is a bit red. This is kind of a burgundy red, and this is a bright red, right? These don't match. Often people go into Godot and they don't understand why everything looks so blue. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about CSGs, but pro tip, we are currently using the default environment. If I double click on that, one of the things you'll see is we're generating this procedural sky, and we are using, where is it? It's not under sky. It's under ambient light. Here we go. We are using black for the background ambient light and sky contribution of 1. That means 100% of the ambient light comes from the sky. The sky is blue. We are shining blue light on everything. So this pure white here is blue. So just be aware of that. So if we want to, we can turn the sky contribution to 0, put this at white. I don't recommend pure white, by the way, unless you're making something very, very, very stylized, in which case go for it. But that's something you can do. I'm actually going to undo those because a much better way of working, especially if you have lots and lots of levels, is to make a world environment. And when I go to world environment, I go to environment and I go new. It'll create a brand new environment with brand new lighting. Lighting and everything else. So let's make a new procedural sky. And your procedural, boop. And let's change the ambient light to a nice deep purple. And sky contribution to about 50%. And finally a directional light. That's a light that applies on everything in the world from the same direction. It doesn't actually matter where the light is, but I'm going to move it out of the way in a minute. But that's a great way of getting something that looks a bit like sunlight.
Yeah.
Just to make that a bit more interesting. Local mode. Rotate that way so that we don't have the light coming from the same direction as the camera.
That's a good point to highlight there. The fact that it doesn't matter where this is in the world. This is not the origin of the light. It's just the direction of it.
Yep. And world environment also allows us to do things like ambient occlusion and SS reflections. And you can change your tone map to filmic or ACEs. These are the two tone maps that are used most in games these days. So if you're starting a 3D and everything's looking washed out and blue, that's how you're going to fix that. All right. Now, especially if you're working on a game jam and you don't have a lot of time, don't worry too much that everything's looking blue. Just change how the ambient light's working. Up until 3.3, so everything before Godot 3.3, you could only have 8 lights on an active object. This is an active object. This is going to become important if you start making huge levels out of a single grid map, because a grid map is one object. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so let's say we're going to make ourselves a nice level. So I'm going to get another CSG box, and I'm going to move you down here. You're going to be my floor. Let's say 10 by 50. No, that's stupid. 20. And let's just move you over here. So I'm just making, a very, very silly, simple level. And because it's in a combiner, it's going to use it as one object. Now, Adrian, who's running the Godot Jam, Redefined Game Dev, contacted me recently because he was working on a little test project, and he had a kinematic body. And he didn't understand why when he moved and then stopped on a CSG mesh. I'm going to give my face over here so you guys can see the little gestures I'm doing. There we go. So he makes himself a little level like this, and he has a character who's a kinematic body. The character moves and then stops, and then just starts sliding randomly, like friction isn't being applied. In order to understand why CSGs aren't great for that kind of game, and why that's happening, we have to sort of understand how Godot's pieced together. So, Mikey, are you ready to go a little bit deep dive on inheritance?
Oh, how much are we getting?
Like 7 inheritance.
Nice.
Okay. So, if you look over here, the CSG box, you can see we've got the CSG box properties. These are things just for this node. and we've got hey Adrian. You've got geometry instance, and you've got visual instance, and spatial and node. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my CSG combiner. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go open documentation. If you weren't aware, you can open the documentation directly in Engine. And look here, inherits CSG shape, geometry instance, visual instance, spatial, like they're all in the same order. A CSG shape is a class that takes everything a geometry instance can do and then adds some extra doohickeys, right? Some extra functionality. So if I put in a rigid body, I'm going to right click on that. Rigid body inherits from physics body, which is a collision object, which is spatial. So if we want to access anything in physics, such as friction, we need something that can inherit from physics body. CSGs don't inherit that, so you're not going to get access to any kind of physics material. That doesn't mean you can't use CSGs in a final level. We use them in Canopy cars, which I'll show you in a minute. We use them in Mag Racer. It means you need to know when they're applicable. So if you want just a very simple little boxed out level that's fun for, you know, your very basic game jam kind of game, and you don't need physics materials on the ground, CSGs are amazing. But if you have, for instance, a soccer game or a football game, and you need the ball to slow down, it's not going to do that on this material. So in that situation, you're going to make yourself a static body and use that. So we could go static body, and we could put in a physics material. So we could change the amount of friction, we could change how bouncy it is and how absorbent it is. So if you want a rubber floor, you can have a rubber floor. So just be aware when you're looking at what nodes can do, you need to understand their inheritance. Every time you look in the documentation, just look over there. Should we look at Canopy cars?
I've just posted a link.
Reminded me.
Yes. I'll also post a link to the course as well, where you can learn to make this along with Jan over on our site.
La 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 la. Okay, so one thing I do want to talk about is that Godot can do. This is the wrong one. Sorry, I meant to look at you guys. Okay. So if I go into the level, well, in fact, first I'll just play it. This is not a one-player game. This is for 1 to 4 players, but I've only got me here. Ooh, why are you being so slow? That's not normal. Fine. I'm just going to pick a nice slow car. There we go, the Robin. Something is killing this computer today. Oh, I better know what it is. Yeah, I changed the input map. Non-existent input map function. One moment.
The benefits of playing with your code live, hey?
Yeah. Why is it looking for player 0? Whatever. If I go into the level, I'm not going to debug this live. It was working. It's not working now. I changed something. Which is track, isn't it? There it is. Track TSCM. Now, the track itself is a grid map, but we also have a boundary wall, which you can see if I get close enough. At least you would do if I hadn't. There we go. Oh, I didn't put it in this one. I put it in this version. 1 second. La 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 la. I'm a professional. Wrong alpha. Hee.
It's
Great.
okay.
So I get close to the wall, and there's this red boundary coming in. Now, this boundary, which is not a player, it's not split screen, here we go, is a path, right? So it's just a simple Bezier curve using the path thing. And then what I've done is I've made a CSG polygon. And what we're doing is I've set it to path in the mode over here. Can you see my mouse, by the way?
It's a good question.
Yes, you can. So a CSG polygon is a specific kind of CSG shape where it's not a standard primitive, right? Not what's the word for that? Primitive? Yeah, we'll go with primitive. And normally it will just be like a standard mode. But if I set it to path and then set it what it's following, so it's following this path, and then I set the rotation to path follow, then whatever I define it as right here in this matrix, so it's going to go 1 to the right, it's going to go 1 to the right, 20 to the top, it's going to go 0 to the right, 20 to the top, and then back to 0, 0, we get this lovely wall. So if you want to be able to make smooth Bezier shapes like the track in Mag Racer, that's how we do it. So CSGs are awesome. They're great for making very quick levels. They're great for prototyping. If you're making some sort of multiplayer game and you want to see how the flow works, or you just want to get an idea of a room, you've got good assets coming, or you just want very, very simple assets and you don't need lots of friction. That's one way that you could do this. Some other quick things to be aware of when you're using CSGs. In order to get this effect here, where I have the wall not showing, actually this isn't just CSGs, it's any material, there's a lovely feature here, distance fade. What I've got is, if the minimum distance is 30 and the max distance is 5, that means we won't see it if we're 5 meters away. And because I've got it set to pixel alpha, it's doing this by pixel. If I set it to object, the whole thing gets much more confused. Like if I get close enough to the object with my camera, that's weird. So I've got a pixel alpha, and then only those pixels don't show. In this game, I've got that set up so it's just a simple, hey, you can't go this way. But if I run this track real quick.
I love how easy, once you've got these things put together,
Yep.
you can just paint a level. It's so awesome.
And I will be talking a little bit about grid maps today, but we're doing a more in-depth thing on grid maps on Wednesday. That's the day. Oof, I've had a lot of coffee. So, CSGs, great. This is a mix of CSGs and grid maps. All right. The biggest stumbly roadblocky thing for working in Godot in 3D is getting the assets in. Now, especially if you're working with a game jam. Woo, I can English. Especially if you're working with a game jam, you're probably going to be using this for free packs. So I've got a couple of free Kenny packs here. You might be going with Z-Skies packs. You might be going with Quaternius. They're all very good, right? But there's some things you should know about. So let's make a brand new... Actually, let's just go back into our Go Godot Jam project, which is under G, like an alphabet. And I'm going to put that there. And let's go to my Kenny 3D furniture pack, and I'm just going to copy it in. Actually, I probably have to do it this way, don't I? Oh, no, there it goes. So the first thing you'll notice is we've got a bunch of OBJs coming in. Godot can read OBJs. I would strongly recommend you don't use OBJ files. They're okay, but you won't get the materials coming through properly. You won't get any animation or rigging coming through. Like, use OBJ if you have no choice. FBX, I would suggest, is the next choice, partly because FBX importing in Godot is kind of there, and even so...
It can be very buggy.
It can be very buggy. Like, FBX is not an open source format, but it's a well-used format, but you're kind of at the mercy of the export protocol of whoever wrote that exporter. I would recommend DAE or GLTF. GLTF is the one that Godot's doing a big push for. In fact, in Godot 4, Godot will be able to save GLTFs. Are you crashed on me? Yeah, really, don't use OBJs. You know what? I'm just going to close that and reopen. La 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 la. How does the alphabet go? Godot Jam.
Awesome.
Okay. Still importing.
The other thing, of course, how many objects are you importing?
A lot. Like, this is a big folder. Like, what I would normally do is remove any of the folders I'm not using. But here's my Kenny's 3D furniture pack. Okay, let's make a very simple scene. So, you know what? I'm going to do this with a CSG box, because it's nice and easy. Let's make that nice and wide and shallow. Oop, nope. It's too shallow. And nice and wide this way. And I'm just going to give it some collision. Great. All right, now I'm going to bring in a static body. Not a static body, sorry, a rigid body. I'm going to bring in a piece of furniture that can be moved in my game. And let's go into my GLTFs. And let's bring in a bench. I'm going to open it anyway. And here is my bench. Okay. I'm going to just, because I'm using 3.3, I could just use copy, so Control C, and go over here and paste it in, and that will work just fine. What I could also do is I could go in here, I could save this mesh. If you're doing this, I recommend you save this as .mesh, not .trs, because .mesh is a binary file, .trs is a text file, and it's just going to take up a little more space on your desk while you're working on it. When you export the game, it's all going to be compressed down to a binary anyway, but while you're working on it, you may as well keep it a little bit tidy. Okay, so here is my bench clone. And let's give this a very simple collision shape. You know what? I'm actually going to generate one.
We actually have a video on the channel where Yang goes into that in much more detail as well about using optimization.
Okay,
Can't remember what the video is called, but I'll post a link in a sec.
I've raised this bench a little bit, so it'll fall. And I've given it a static body. What are we expecting to happen? If you answered possessed bench, I can't really see in this one. The bench is not a good example. Oh wait, are you sleeping? Let's try that again. Great. This one isn't showing because it's not a big... Oh, hang on. My collision shape is too big. No, collision's in the right place. I'm actually going to show on a different one because this is too small to show, but I'm going to show it on the desk because I'm pretty sure the desk will do this. But the point I'm trying to make here is to do with how the origins are calculated. So when you make this in Blender, I'm not going to worry about the... Actually, let's bring the drawing. When you make this in Blender, let's... Oh, I didn't make it... Thank you. And you've got your nice little shape, and let's go simple convex shape. And we might see it this one, but if not, I'll just have to talk us through what happens. Yeah, we can't see it. All right. An easy way to get tripped up in Godot. This desk is calculated from the rigid body. Let's hide the floor for a moment. That means where the gizmo is, right here, that's the rigid body. The desk, as a mesh, is up here in the corner. The collision shape is up here in the corner. So if I bring you all the way back here. Actually, you know what? Let's change this for a CSG mesh as well. Not a CSG, a mesh instance. And make you a box, or a cube. And we'll make you 10 that way, 0.2 that way, 10 that way, and you're a static body. Great. There it goes. Remember what I was saying about CSGs aren't physics bodies? I completely forgot. Okay, so this desk. This is not how I expected desk to work. Now you might think, well, you made it full, and Godot just has bad physics. Godot doesn't have bad physics. Godot's physics is fine. If I move this back down to just above the floor, and I press play, we get the same problem. Possessed desk. Why is this desk so possessed? Because...
Oh, I know.
Tell me, Mikey.
Because the origin is in the lower corner instead of in the center of gravity, center of mass for our object.
So the rigid body is... Where's the rigid body now? I moved the thing. Oh, it's even worse. No wonder it was worse. The rigid body is calculated from where the gizmo is. So all physics calculations... Let's just get rid of the floor so I can see this clearly. All physics calculations are happening from here. I've got to move the mesh and not the collision shape, which is really dumb of me. So let's move you back up there and move you down to here. That means the collision shape, which is here, is off to the side. So when the collision is being reported, it's rotating around its center of gravity and bouncing. So when you are making this stuff, make sure that your rigid body, or your kinematic body, or whatever you're using, actually it's almost always going to be a rigid body in this case, is roughly in the center here. Now this is a little bit annoying. Another way you can do this is go into Blender and fix where the origin is. And that'll work just fine. So that should be a bit better. So now if I press play, we shouldn't have a possessed desk. This happens a lot with outside resources. Anything that wasn't built with Godot in mind has the potential for this happening. That's not because the people who make it don't know what they're doing. It's because this behavior isn't the same in every engine. There we go. A bit easier to see now. So, quick, easy fix. If you're using someone else's assets, make sure that the mesh and the collision is offset from the rigid body so that your center of gravity is here. In this case, I want the center of gravity here, but you might want it near the top or near the bottom. And that's going to be true not just of furniture packs, it's going to be true on things like grid map pieces. So I'm going to take these GLTFs for these grid map pieces, and I'm going to bring you back. And let's make a real quick grid map. Pardon me. New folder. Kenny Roads. It should be a little bit faster this time. Goodness me, that's a lot of tiles. Meow, 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 meow. Oh, what's it doing? La, 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 la.
Importing.
Yeah, it's still importing. Sometimes Godot likes to freeze when it's doing this. I don't know if it's my computer, actually. Oh, here it goes. It's done. Great. Okay, so let's make a grid map. And to make a grid map, I'm going to take all of these. I would normally just import them as meshes, but as there are 300 of them, I can't be having with it. Let's not take all of them. What do you think? Let's take some of them. Oh, I have to do it this way. Lame. All right, fine. So let's make a real quick copy. 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 I'm just going to do it with 3 because I don't have time for this. Also, you're in the wrong place. You can go this way. Okay, so we now have 3 pieces, and I can use these to make a grid map. If you've not made a grid map before, by the way, they're awesome. They're Godot's 3D tile maps. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mesh, and I'm just going to create a tri-mesh static body with all 3. I'm going to go to Scene. I'm going to go to Convert to Mesh Library. And I'll talk about this a lot more on Wednesday, but let's just call this grid map test. And now I can close these ones, don't save, and make a new 3D scene, put in a grid map. Mesh library, load, la 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 la. Great. So, we've now got these mesh pieces, and if I knew the size of these, I could set the cells up. It can't be 3 by 3, that's a crazy size. Okay, so these tiles are 3 meters squared. However, I should be able to press S and rotate on the Z axis. And I can't. So let's say I want to place one right here. You see the original disappears? What's happening is they're actually both in the same cell, but the origin is being calculated here. Here's my grid map. My piece is up here because of where the origin is. That throws everything off. I can turn off center to make it a little bit better. That throws everything off. So if I put this one here, you see how they're both sharing that origin point? They're both in the same place. That makes this kind of grid map very hard to use. What you'd have to do is go in and manually change each origin again. It's one of the reasons why we made our asset pack, and I'm going to talk about our asset pack for a moment. Not because I want to sell it to you guys, I don't think that's fair for a game jam, but just to show you the kind of work you need to do to get like a full series of assets made. So let's get rid of that, and you know what? I'm going to open my Canopy Dungeon Kit. I'm going to copy my assets. I'm going to go into my file system. I'm going to paste my assets and import it. Boom. All right, because
I will drop a link, by the way, for the kits, just in case anybody is interested.
Oh yeah, by all means, give me money. But if we go into the building tiles and I go to dungeon assets, these are the walls and floors. And what we've had to do is when we go into Blender, I've had to make sure, one, that all of them are the same size, right? So these floors are 20 meters by 20 meters. These walls are 20 meters by, I want to say, half a meter and 6 meters high. So they're all consistent. And the origins are all centered and on the floor. They're all aligned. And this is really important because then when I make my grid map, which in this case, I've actually got one pre-saved, so I could just put that in there. I could just put that in there. There we go. All of these cells and centerings are done. I can just put my wall in and it works. And the reason it works is the origins are in the right place. Godot is going to calculate everything from where that origin is. So anytime you're working with 3D assets, it's vital to understand why if you're working with someone else's wall and you press rotate, it doesn't rotate on the center, it rotates around this point and messes everything up. You can absolutely still use Quaternius's wall packs or Kenny's interior packs or whatever else you want to use. Just make sure that you know you're going to have to spend some time going in there and moving the assets, either in Blender or offsetting them in that way I showed you with the desk in Godot. Because otherwise, it's really frustrating. It's actually a really simple fix, a little time consuming, but not that big a deal. But if you don't know about it, it's really annoying. There we go.
I love the way you can just pretty much paint a level.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the collisions are all in as well because all of these have static collision shapes and a collision shape. Do keep your collision shapes as simple as you can. Don't use complicated tri-mesh collision shapes unless you have to. And anytime you're trying to save disk space, make sure that your collision shapes are saved. So if I go to the props and I'll open, I don't know, the flagon. It's a good example. The flagon has a very, very simple shape, right? So I've done this collision shape, and when I go to the collision, I've actually saved it. And I've saved it as a dot shape, which is a binary, which means instead of this file taking 60K, this file takes 1K, the collision shape takes a K, and the mesh shape takes a K. You don't really need to worry about that. In our case, we wanted to distribute the pack, so we want to make it as small as possible. But when you export it as a binary, it'll all get shrunk down anyway. I also want to point out something else that's really good for 2D and 3D that a lot of people don't play with. So let's go to my RPG sandbox, which is where Mikey and I like to play. I'm gonna get sued, aren't I? There we go.
Not for that rendition of it.
In the key of what was that key? Okay. So there's a few things going on here. I know why. There's a few things going on here. One, this terrain is a height map terrain. This is not native to Godot. 2, these god rays is not native to Godot. 3, this water is not native to Godot. And neither is the buoyancy. 4, the way all these plants are laid out is not native to Godot. To get all of these effects, we've used plugins, specifically assets from the asset library. And to access them, all you need to do is go to Asset Library and search. So I'm using Height Map Terrain, which is this one. You click on it, you download it, and then you'd install it. Now in this case, I'm not going to install it because I already have it installed. One thing you do need to do once you've downloaded any of these things you're using, so I'm also using the God Rays plugin. There it is, God Rays post-processing plugin. Make sure that you go to your project settings, you go to your plugins, and you enable them. Because if you have one of these and then you disable it, you can't access it. This one, by the way, is great if you're working with a simple palette. In our case, we went to low spec, picked a palette we liked.
Yeah.
We put it in here, we load from picker, and then whenever we're working with any object, let's say the CSG box, which is this bridge over here. Couldn't be bothered to make a bridge, so it's a CSG box. I can go into the albedo, and here's the palette we're using. Okay. All of these are really good add-ins. So if you're working in 3D, some things you might want to think about. One, the God Rays plugin. Very, very easy. You install it, and then whenever you've got a Omni light or I think directional light or Omni light, doesn't work great with a spotlight, although you can technically do it. It just doesn't work well. If I go to my light, if I can find my light, where's my light? Where are you? Mikey, I lost the sun. Oh, it's called sun. I just drop in God Rays and then put in the values I like, and it'll automatically do the post-processing for me. Like, very, very simple. If you add too many of these, one, it's going to look really weird, and two, you're going to get some really odd results. I really recommend the God Rays plugin. Scatter. Scatter is awesome. So if I look at these flowers, I have a single scatter node, which is placed over here. It's not laggy.
I should think it's
my internet.
And maybe your computer with... I mean, this is quite a heavy scene, and you're streaming.
Oh, and I've also got 3 versions of Godot open. Let me close some.
Are you really pushing it?
I mean...
Nice.
Let's see if that helps. So what scatter does is it allows me to define areas with a Bezier curve and then say what I want to do. So in this case, I've got flowers, and I'm saying in here, I want to distribute them randomly. I want 10,000 flowers, which is what we have in this scene. I want to randomize the rotation on the y-axis, and I want to exclude the area I've marked as path, which is this one here. And that allows me to get these plants in. They've all just vanished. Oh, it's because of my height map. That allows me to get these plants in and get really, really easy scattering, I guess. Really easy placing without having to worry too much about it. Just update that and then bring my flowers back in. There we go. Am I still jittery?
It looks pretty smooth to me now.
Okay. YouTube is telling me I'm still jittery, so YouTube is lying. You don't have to do things randomly. These fences are a scatter as well. I've just done it along a line and told it, I want it to rotate here. I don't want any random offsetting. And it's just done it. These roses are a scatter. These trees are a scatter. And if you don't need any kind of collision, like with these flowers, it's going to use multi-mesh instance. And a multi-mesh instance is a great way of getting a lot of geometry on screen at the same time without really slowing things down. Like 10,000 individual plants and a decent frame rate. So if I play this scene... Do, 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 do.
Loading up.
There we go.
There we go.
Like, you're probably losing some of the YouTube, but that's pretty smooth. Like, for 10,000 plants. And also, I can switch to nighttime mode with a click of a button, and it was instant. Like, I'm not losing anything. All the shadows are being redrawn, everything's being done. The God rays on the moon are much more subtle. One thing I will say, by the way, picking a palette and sticking to it makes a huge difference. Everything in this level is in the palette we picked for the dungeon kit. So the light, the sky, the water, it's a really quick way. So use that color picker plugin. Also, that dungeon kit we made earlier, if you stick to that palette and use careful lighting and a couple of careful effects, you can get some great things going on. So let's take a look at the dungeon. Here we go. First thing, God Ray. I mean, that's not bad, right? Very simple particles, very simple lighting, very simple props. I've got SSAO on here, so we've got ambient occlusion. We've got a very subtle fog going on here. So there's a very subtle purple fog at the bottom, just to give it some depth. And you can really get some great effects going on. So if I go over to this chest and open the chest, right? Couple of God rays, keeping everything in palette, and the game just looks so much smoother. So if you're working in 3D, you can make things look beautiful very simply. The other one I'm really proud of is the exit. Now, if you're comfortable with Blender, you can make something like this in a couple of days. We spent a long time on this because we wanted to make it easy for people to just drag and drop. But the point I'm making here is the lighting and color effects that are available to you. Sticking within the palette is a great idea to get what you need. That was a terrible sentence. But just to show you how that works, let's open up a low spec. So I'm going to go to low spec 500. Okay, so I'm using this current palette. You can go to low spec.
Just to let you know, Jan, the stream's gone to about 1 frame a minute at the moment.
Oh dear.
What's OBS saying in the lower part of it, on the lower right?
4,700k per second. 60 frames a second. It says it's fine.
Oh, nice. So no drop frames. Fair enough.
So, I guess YouTube?
Yep.
Can you guys see it yet?
Low specs just come up.
Great. Okay, so low spec is great. You just find a palette you like. So I'm going to browse palettes.
Michael has a question here. How did you guys make the landscape?
That's a good question. I'll talk about that in just a second. So let's say you want your Mystic 16 palette. You go in here. And then you just drag, copy. You open your Godot. Open your simple template editor. You paste them in. You load them from Picker. And now when I go into any mesh or anything that requires a color picker, ooh, what is slowing my computer down? There it is. It should now update Picker. There we go. Oh, it's because I've got two things going. Never mind. But that's how we got them in. How do we get them here? So what I'm doing is I'm using this very, very good and quite well documented plugin for H-Terrain. And H-Terrain allows me to draw a height map in Editor, right? So I can go into H-Terrain and let's smooth the height. Smoothie, right? Let's make this a little bit bigger. And let's just raise this bit. Boop. Great. Once that's done, I can go here, I can bake the global map, and I can update it. So originally we downloaded a bunch of textures from CC0 Textures, I think it was. But it looked really weird to have realistic textures with realistic normals and a very stylized world. So instead what I did is I picked some of the colors from the color palette, and I went into GIMP, and I just made these textures. I made a 2K texture. In fact, what I did was I went into Substance Painter, and I did a painted effect. But you could do this in GIMP with just a splish, splish, splish. And that's what you've got. Specifically, if you look at hand-painted Geely style in Substance Painter on YouTube, and you have Substance Painter, that's what I did. It's just a procedure-generated splish thing. But honestly, just take the colors you have, do some brushes, and then when you apply it, it'll apply like this. So yeah, some things to play with here. When you're making your background, yeah, I think it's OBS not playing well with Godot, to be honest. Is this still going slowly, Mikey?
No, it looks like it's picked up.
Okay. When you're making a background, when you look at sun, which is in background, la 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 la, I know what I'm doing. Sky, there it goes, sun. You have latitude and longitude. And what I've done is I've tried to place my directional light roughly where the sun is. So I can actually move the sun and the shadows go weird. So that's a nice little trick, right? If you have a procedural sky and you have a directional map, put them in the same place, put a God ray on the directional light, and the whole thing just feels right. Point 2. Shadows are not black. I know we like to think of shadows as not black, but basic lighting theory, or basic color theory, the shadow is going to be the opposite color to the dominant light, the key light. In this case, I've stayed in palette, and I've made this dark purple color. And that just gives it a lot more depth. I've also got the skylights and the background lights sort of playing. I've actually not used the sky Canopy at all. I'm just using this purple as an ambient. And the directional light is this palette that's in yellow, so you've got this nice little stylized crossplay. If you wanted to be more realistic, you'd put a bit more sky in there as well, just to blend these colors out. I didn't want that. I wanted this very stark, so that's what I've gone with. If we go into the dungeon tiles with this very well-named scene, don't name your scenes like this. So if we go over to Castle Dungeon Tile Test Thing short name. Yes, SSA 0 is a really good idea, actually. I should play with that. I haven't thought of that. Actually, while we're here, let's take a look at the environment settings for in here. What I've done is I've made the background this... the background is actually black. There we go. The ambient light is that dark purple. That's this color here. I've also got a fog that's the same color, and it's very, very subtle. Like, you can't really see it, but if I get rid of it, it's quite obvious, right? The floor suddenly becomes a lot plainer. So a little bit of subtle fog. I've got my tone map set to either Filmic or Aces, depending on the effect you want. It's just going to make the whole thing feel a lot more nuanced, a lot closer to what you might want. It's really down to how much saturation you want. I'm not using auto exposure because, frankly, it's irritating. If any of you have played Cyberpunk 2077, you know that thing where you're driving into a tunnel and then suddenly the road outside the tunnel is unusable? It's because they're using auto exposure.
Yeah, I don't like the way that works in games at all.
It's annoying. Like, I understand what they're simulating, but it just blinds me. I've got reflections on, I've got SSAO on, I've got glow on, and I'm not really playing too much for those levels. Everything else is just keeping things in there. So these lights, the particles and the actual Omni light in there are both in palette. The throne room, the same deal. Like, all of this should be in palette. So it's actually quite simple to get really good looking 3D in Godot, especially if you don't want to go ultra realistic. And that kind of brings us to the elephant in the room. So for this one, I'm going to shut down Godot and bring Mikey back into the conversation.
Well, hello. I've been waiting patiently.
So there's a lot of conversations that happen around what's the best engine. A lot of conversations, Godot's not performant at 3D, or Unity can't do 2D as well and 3D as well. And I think all of these are really unhelpful. These are great tools, and they can all do great things. If you want to make an ultra-realistic, very fast, multiplayer, first-person shooter or 3D action game, maybe try Unreal. Not because Godot can't do it. It can clearly do it, but because Unreal has that functionality out of the bat. I mean, Mikey, you've played with Unreal Pawns, right?
Yes, exactly.
So if you want to make something like this dungeon crawler as a 3D shooter, how hard would that be?
It'd be relatively simple to put together. I mean, you could get the whole thing put together, including control systems, in probably a day or two.
Right. Because that's kind of what Unreal does. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a specialized tool that does that very well. It can do a bunch of other things very well too, but that's its niche. Unreal can do 2D, but it you really have to work around it, right? The other thing I see is people talking a lot about, Godot can do 3D, but it's not realistic. You can do realism in Godot if you know what you're doing and you're prepared to go into the code and do all these things, but realism is a really hard bar. Now, Mikey, you work a lot with Blender.
Yeah. So realism is a style, it's a choice, and it's a pain in the backside. Truth be told, if you are working as an indie developer I would highly recommend, including whether you're just making models, not just making a whole game, but actually sitting down and thinking, well, with low poly models, the game's going to be easier to work with. You can iterate through those models a lot quicker. That's a big one. So, each model's not taking a month to do. Seriously, if you want to try sort of a realistic model, it will take time to do. And also, it will take a lot of time to optimize and get right.
And there's another
no
problem
two
as
ways
well,
about
which is the uncanny valley effect. Which
Yeah,
is
definitely.
the closer you get to real, the more unreal it looks. Like there's a hard wall that you sort of have to cross, and the closer you get to it, the harder it pushes back. And you see this a lot with like realistic robots that are made, where they just look really creepy.
Yeah.
And you see this in some AAA games as well, where the characters, I mean, I can't remember which one it was. It wasn't Skyrim, but there was some huge, really well-made RPG where the characters' eyes were just terrifying. Because their eyes were moving in the ways that faces weren't. So, I would say you can get great effects, but if your goal is realism, one, be aware of the style, and two, be aware that no matter what you pick, that's a really hard bar to hit. Mass Effect. Yes, Mass Effect had really creepy eyes.
Yes, it did.
There's a lot more I could talk about with 3D, but I feel like at this point we should probably open it up. So, does anyone have any questions, concerns, thoughts, comments, interpretive dances, or jingles? I have a toucan. I'm waiting for the chat lag.
That's all right. It's been quite fun sat here in the background, just sending a few things there. Oh, yep. We've got 28 people watching now, apparently, which is absolutely fantastic. So, if you've not sounded off in the comments, then
let us know. And like, are you considering 3D? Is this something you want to stay away from? Can I show them something that you and when Mike and I first met, like the very first time we'd met, we'd had like one chat on a Zoom call once. We were at someone else's house. And I was doing research into this new game engine that I was looking to teach that I knew nothing about, called Godot. And Mikey was doing a course on Blender. And Mikey said, can it do 3D? I went, I think so. Do you have any characters? Sure. And we kind of did an unofficial 2-person game jam. We made a very simple, very silly game in 4 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show that real quick, if I can remember how to use my computer.
Yay.
La, 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 la. There we go. Where's my Godot? Open up. Okay, Cube Dude Kickabout. Oh, this is going to get loud, isn't
it? Turn desktop sound. I will be quiet along with it, but if you turn your desktop sound down...
No, I'm going to turn my master sound bus down.
Before you press play. No.
This is something we made in like 4 hours, so it's utterly doable in a game jam. I knew very little about 3D. We made a lot of mistakes. That's too loud, isn't it?
I can't hear it yet.
There we go. Really hard to do by yourself.
I can hear you mashing the keyboard, but hey. No, I mean you've only just started playing on the screen here. I love the lag.
So yeah, this is Cube Dude Kickabout. A lot of silly mistakes. Very, very simple. I wasn't using any animation tree blender, so you stop a character moving and it just stops. But this is doable in a couple of minutes, right? So Godot can make 3D games very quickly. Let's bring you back up to 0 decibels.
This was a lot of fun to play as well.
It was.
Did we keep in the bug that was like, how many times can you score before the game restarts?
We took it out and then it came back. Like a later version of Godot brought it back, so that was fun. Then no, we took it out. There was a fun bug that we found when we were playing with a bunch of people. We made this thing in 4 hours, and in fact, what was the game? There was another guy there who just released an indie game. It's a puzzle game to do with cubes. And he took one look at this and went like, "You could do this in 4 hours." It's like, yeah, we could probably do it quicker now, but and they just sat there playing it while Mikey and I watched proudly for like an hour and a half. And then they found this bug where you score a goal, but if you score again before the ball respawns, you score twice. So the game was to try and bounce it off the person as many times as possible, get a high score.
That's fantastic. The other thing, I think a very good thing to take away from that experience was you guys just saw how basic that game was, but how fun it was watching for us, just watching people having fun playing it. It didn't have to be a complex game.
Yep.
I think a lot of people try and make games far more complex than they need to be.
And this is something as well that Mikey, well, something else that I've learned a lot working with Mikey is Mikey's expertise and mine have overlaps, but we're experts in very different fields. And when we make stuff together, we learn so much about our own field. A foosball table would be amazing. Another good example is when we made Godot Getaway, where it started with I wanted to try and make a simple little I wanted to use a backtracker algorithm to make a city and drive around in it using a vehicle body node. A vehicle body node is a specialized rigid body in Godot that simulates cars. And then Mikey made a couple of assets, and then we're like, well, maybe we'll make a course out of this, but whatever we do, we're not making a multiplayer. So then we make it, we drive it around. It's like, we have to make this multiplayer. So before you know it, we have an online cops and robbers 3D driving game to Electro Swing.
The funny thing is that it wasn't a cops and robbers game initially until I wouldn't stop chasing you around the city. Right. And it became a game from almost a sandbox mode that we had created.
And really, my takeaways from that are, one, enjoy the game you're making and find the fun in it, right? Like, play it and get to know it and see where the game wants to take you. And two, working with other people is a really great way of developing your own knowledge. I kind of want to show Canopy cars. Let's show Canopy cars, and then we can open it up for questions or start winding this down or do the things. Not Canopy cars. Like... This is the wrong game. I know what I'm doing. Godot Getaway. It's my first time with a computer. All right, let's do pick and pick.
It's okay for first-hand experience. It can be challenging.
Yep.
Making sure everything's working. Stream.
All right, let's do
engine,
this.
Everything.
Okay. My name's gonna be Jan. I'm gonna host the game. I'm gonna host it as Godot Jam. That's gonna be our randomly generated city using a seed. Let's change our car color. Let's make it a nice dark purple. Let's go darker. There we go.
If we had planned this better, we could actually play it multiplayer.
We could. We want to be criminals or cops? Let's be cops.
Go Godot Jam. Purple jelly car.
Yep. You know what? Let me, because I'm a little bit ahead of Mikey. Turn that off. There we go. So I'm using my controller for this. I haven't played this in a while, but I'm trying to use GTA controls.
Nope.
Nope. So yeah, we made this completely procedure-generated city with procedure-generated props, or procedurally placed props at least. Lots of fun things going on. And the cops are trying to rob stores and deliver money. The cops are trying to arrest them using a siren.
Donk.
There's lots of fun things we can do here, including... La, la, la.
Don't do it. Go on, do it. It's it. One of the things we learnt from this, not necessarily about... we learnt tons about the asset workflow, etc. But what you're seeing here is all the alpha assets to build the city up with. And because we were making the courses in parallel, the actual Blender course that goes with the Godot course has all the shiny assets in.
And one thing I will point out here, actually, we learnt a lot from reusing assets. So here there are 2 buildings, and
so
what we
two
do
in this one, yeah,
and what we do is we rotate them randomly. So it looks like we have 16 buildings, and then we have neighborhoods, and all the neighborhood is the same building, but I'm just changing the color of the albedo. And we change the soundtrack as you go along there. So you can actually get away with very, very few assets and make it look good. I really like these little billboards, by the way.
buy eggs.
Yep.
Oh, hey, Heartbeast. Go check Heartbeast out if you've not already.
Oh, yeah. Definitely check Heartbeast out. If you want to make, especially 2D stuff in Godot, a lot of fun. And I'm going to drive past Shut Up and Sit Down here. It's one of my favorite websites.
I can see the blimp.
Oh, not the blimp. I forgot about the blimp.
So when we're generating assets, it's a good rule of thumb to use real world scale and then work everything out from there. So I made a real world scale blimp. What happened, Jan?
Mike made a real world scale blimp, and it took up half the city. Because it turns out the Hindenburg was quite a large craft, and it covered the entire minimap. To the point that I had to make the blimp invisible to the minimap. By the way, this minimap is just a second camera looking straight down with the lighting not being affected by it. So yeah, you can make, like, here I'm using a vehicle node. We have 2 buildings and a couple of procedurally generated rules to make a city. And you've got something that feels like a real place. And the great thing is every time you play this game, you're going to get a different city. So yeah, working with other people, especially in a game jam situation, is a great way of developing your own knowledge and surprising yourself. We learned so much from asset workflow, little bugs. Mikey would make something and like, I can't use this. You haven't applied the transforms. Something else to look for, by the way, when you're using free 3D assets, is if they're not made specifically for Godot, they might have to scale up at like by 10 or by 100, and that's not going to affect most engines. But in Godot, it means that the collision shape is going to be 100, scaled by 100. And scaling collisions can be a little tricky, so go into Blender and change and apply those transforms. But yeah, is there no script on the minimap? There's no script on the minimap. I mean, I can show you the minimap. Oh wait, no, there is a script on the minimap.
Classic.
Well, here's the script on the minimap. La la la. First, I'm getting the car. This is not how I would get the car now, but fine, that's how I'm getting the car. There's my minimum height. It's because we're changing height with speed. Get the speed, multiply it by twice the minimum height.
Yeah, so it zooms out as you get faster and zooms back in as you're going
but that's
slower.
all it's doing. That's the entirety of the script. But yeah, I should have probably checked that.
I like that get node ...
That's some really janky code right there. That's not how I do that now. But again, it's a learning process, right? Other fun things you can do: play with the animation player, play with the tween nodes. Animation player is just awesome in Godot anyway because you can animate any property. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? So, meanwhile, I would recommend you all go to the Godot Jam. Mikey, I can't speak.
Don't ask me. You know what my speech is like.
You should all go to this place and look it up, register it, check out our other partners. There's some really creative stuff out there. There's some great resources, some great communities to be part of. And the idea is just to bring Godot to as many people as possible. Get people who've never used the engine before to participate in the jam. Get people who have never played Godot games before to play with it. Really just have fun with it and just show everybody what the engine is already capable of. Yes, Godot 4.0 is huge and will do some amazing stuff. I mean, just the lighting changes in Godot 4.0 alone are breathtaking. But even
that's definitely going to spark a lot of change and a lot of courses.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited to get a proper lighting course in Godot, especially with the Vulkan engine.
Oh yeah, I mean there's some incredible stuff, and the collision particle system and all kinds of great stuff. But Godot 3 is incredible. Like, you can make great stuff with it very quickly. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, play with it, get bugs, explore what those bugs do to your game.
If you want to check...
Any advice on using Godot's voxels with Godot? Good question, Colin. It depends what you want to do with them. Are you talking like a Minecraft game? In which case, my advice would be probably code it in C#. Just because that way you can get a lot of voxels in one place. You could probably do it in GDScript too, to be honest. There is someone who's been working on a voxel creator in Godot. Other than that, you could do something with a grid map. Because I don't know if you were here at the beginning of the stream, but a grid map is Godot's 3D tile map. And it works in 3 dimensions. And you can affect it at runtime. So you can actually have the player affect it. That said, it can be a little bit annoying to set up that way. So you'd have to play with it a bit. But if you just want, I mean, you can absolutely use voxels in Godot. In fact, RPG in a Box, which I will link to you, let me find a link for it, is made in Godot. Here we go. And this has an in-game voxel editor, so you can make assets in your engine and then use them to make an RPG. In fact, I should probably show the video up here. It's really good. I'm looking very dark. Why am I looking so dark? Probably because I'm a goth.
Because the sun is setting, yeah.
I mean, if you're going to answer me every time I say something stupid, I'm just going to have to stop saying stupid things. Because my gain is weird.
It's great not having to worry about lighting.
Yeah, right. But good question, Colin. Any other questions? Thoughts, comments, etc. Oh, and I hope that helped, by the way.
That's awesome. And, of course, Jan will be back uncharacteristically. We've got 2 streams this week rather than just the one.
This week. On Wednesday, we were talking about the secrets of grid map, because you can do a lot of really cool stuff with grid maps. You can bake navigation into them. You can, really have fun with them. But there's easy mistakes you can make, not least of which the normal navigation keys don't work when you're in grid map mode.
Which I often laugh at when Jan's showing me.
Yep. And it's good to see you, Daz. Welcome back over.
Hey, Daz. How you doing? Yep. If you guys want to check out what else we do as well, then do pop over to our website, Canopy Games, and check out our courses.
Would you like to put a link in?
I have done.
Where? I don't see it.
Are you watching through the YouTube live controller?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Yeah. That's really slow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you should, by all means, check us out. We have free tips on Godot and a free setup on Blender, as well as a bunch of paid content. We have our YouTube channel, which you're already at. We have our Discord, which I'd like to link them to our Discord.
I certainly will.
The trees are Z-Sky, which I've then recolored using our using the low spec 500 palette. So again, really simple little change. The thing you need to know about the trees is the scale wasn't applied and the origins in the wrong place. So I had to tweak them a little bit to make them work. And then it's just using the scatter plugin. The scatter plugin, by the way, is amazing. I'm actually going to link to that.
I need the HTTPS in that, so let me redo that.
Mm-hmm. Meow, 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 meow. Oh, message retracted. Obviously, if you guys want to get our paid Dungeon Assets pack, you're more than welcome to. I don't know that it's a good idea for a jam unless you really like working with Godot and you want to make a big dungeon crawler. But if you do, it's pretty good. Our next big course is probably going to be an action RPG. We're still very much in the talking about it phase. Like, we don't have any game systems yet. There's a lot we can do there.
Yeah, they're kind of critical having a game, isn't it? So
I haven't looked at Softbody since Godot 3.1 came out. In fact, since Godot 3.0 came out. It looks way better than the 3.1 beta, where you had to know the vertex number for every anchor vertex. But Softbodies are great. You should absolutely have a mess with them if you want cloaks and flags and all the rest of it. Also, shaders. If you're looking to do some great effects, I recommend GD Quest Shader Course. Back Bastian Olej. Was that how you say his name? How do you say Bass's name?
Yes, I say Bass.
Bastian Olej. That's how you pronounce it. Has some amazing videos, and on one of them he makes an Angry Birds clone, and you know that little line that draws across the screen.
Yeah,
he does that with a shader, and I'm just like, that would never even occur to me. Like, there's some great resources out there for 2D and 3D. And the other great thing about Godot, of course, is you could do 2D in 3D and 3D in 2D. Like, you can mix them up.
Dimensionception.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So, meanwhile, all of this has been brought in conjunction with the Godot Game Jam and our wonderful partners over there. So you should absolutely go check out Godot Game Jam's website, which I will link one more time. And you guys should absolutely join and find a team on our Discord or someone else's Discord. Find someone who does Blendery assets, make some stuff in 3D. Make 3D Tetris. Make something silly. Make a game that's as complex as Cyberpunk, but without the weird gameplay decisions and bugs. That game puzzled me. Like, why am I not cool enough to buy pants? Why is my street cred too low to buy pants from you? That's a weird insult. That's a burn.
You're not cool enough for these.
I'm sorry, you're 45. You can't buy these pants.
I'm not going to say anything. I value our friendship.
What's the FPS in this? Actually, it's a good question. Let's take a look. My OBS doesn't play well with this. In fact, every time I record this, it doesn't play well. But let's go over to the RPG Sandbox.
Yeah, we've got to be fair to Jan's computer here. If I remember correctly, it's a 6th or 7th gen i5 and a 1060.
Yeah.
And when you're streaming using OBS, you're gonna have some slowdown. It always happens.
Let's set this up so you guys can see, because that's a very good question. Because you guys, every time I record demos for this as well, I have to go through the NVIDIA recorder, which is a very different feel. So let's go. Actually, just get rid of my picture so make this fair. And let's open up the debugger and go to the profiler. Where's profiler? I've lost it.
That, of course, by the way, whilst you're opening that up, that's something that I think a lot of people forget is if you are using something like the Unreal Engine, that can be far more taxing on your system. So you're always struggling. In this particular case, this runs incredibly smoothly on Jan's computer. Whether or not we can stream it smoothly, that's a different
question. So if I start the profile, and there's my frames per second, and I go back into here and bring the camera back. So what are we running at right now? I actually can't see where the frames are. What's the way of... There is a way of actually showing the FPS. I forgot how you show your frames per second.
Well, the frame time there, 15 milliseconds is over. 16 is 60 frames per second, so...
There is a way of showing the FPS in the corner, but I forgot what it is.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it's gone. Can anyone remember how you put the frames in the corner here?
I mean, I will say, whilst...
Oh, yeah, thank you. It is the monitors tab. Thank you, Bodan.
Nice.
Hopefully I said your name right. Okay, so let's put you up here.
Yeah, it is important to be mindful of how performant your game is, but not when you're trying to just create it and try ideas. Optimization always comes at the end rather than at the beginning, but you do have to have it in mind. That is important.
The God Rays are slowing me down to 53, 52. But I am like pretty happily hovering over the 55. area, and that's with running OBS and streaming and everything else.
Yeah.
Let's
and of course this will be locked to 60 because you've got
that's
VSync.
what my physics frames are locked at. And I'll head down to the dungeony bit so you can just get that fair thing.
This is so much smoother than earlier, by the way. Earlier was a slideshow.
Yeah.
So whatever's
happened down to
happened
34 for a moment. Oh, I know why.
Yeah, that'll happen.
It's because all these rigid bodies settling. Who wants to see the skulls? Let's go say hi to the skulls. Hi, skulls!
Ah, this is nice. This is much more fluid than before.
So, fun thing, on this demo, I made the skulls randomly blink. Just because reasons. We've got the spikes over here. Hi, spikes.
Smash.
Let's go see the drawbridge.
Oh, Bob doesn't follow us anymore.
No, I got rid of Bob.
Poor Bob.
Yeah, I know.
So I love this 2D game you've made, Jan.
There's a node called Visibility Notifier that signals when objects aren't in view. Great for optimizing. I'm also using a grid map, so all of this level is one level. Boom. Oh, can't go that way.
Oh.
There we go.
That's nice.
So yeah, there are some areas where I'm dropping down to 35, I guess. And honestly, that could all be optimized. Like, this is just a showcase. Like, there's no game systems here.
I mean, yeah.
When you
want to, when you want to show off a game that you've made, you want it to look pretty as well.
Honestly, a lot of this was us just showing off the asset pack and playing with it and saying, okay, so like, we need to get these collision shapes to be more performant. I do think having this many rigid bodies next to each other was a mistake. In terms of
Never.
But like, these are all one potion bottle. I'm just using a material override to get different colors on them.
Yeah, the potion bottles. I loved when you showed me those. I was like, I really like how they worked out incredibly well.
Oh, another good lighting trick, by the way. This is straight out of theatre lighting. A nice special, which is what you call this in theatre lighting, is a great way of drawing attention to this is where something important is going to happen. So, like, I expect this is where the boss is going to be, or something, right? The fact that these thrones are illuminated in a different color tells the player this is important. So, a nice little trick if you're working in 3D. But yeah, the performance overall, like, I'm hovering around the 45 to 50 mark in a very unoptimized level while streaming. So, it's not bad. I'm also shining a lot of lights that are staying on the grid map, and the grid map is one object, so it's calculating the lighting for them constantly, which is a bit
Can I just say I'm loving the when you put those two thrones next to each other, they really worked really well together.
Yep. I also quite like this little cauldron. So yeah, good question. I mean, it depends on what you're doing. How many collision shapes are running. These God rays are expensive. Like, look at the dip that happened when I brought the God ray in.
That's why you put graphics options in. We had to do that with Mag Racer.
Oh,
because
yeah, definitely.
We needed to make sure that as many people as possible could play, but that does mean that you have to turn some things off or the resolution down. There's lots of things that can be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, and one of the things we're using with this character is just a placeholder, but we're using a very simple animation tree blend, so when I stop moving, it'll take him a while to stop. So there's a lot of fun things you can do in there. And now I think I will bring back my head. Boop! So yeah, all of this was made with 3 tools. We did it with Godot, we did it with Blender, we did it with GIMP. That's not true. I did the texture with the ground texture with Substance Painter, but I could have done it in GIMP.
Yeah, when it comes to using bits of software, they are just tools. That's a really important thing to hammer home, including game engines. So if you're comfortable in Photoshop, GIMP, whatever tool that you want to use, just use it.
Yeah.
Even if you're misusing it, that is absolutely fine. If you get the end result, go for it.
Yeah, the character does have slide moves because the character was sort of a proof of concept that Mikey made. Like, we're looking to make a character pack for Godot, where you could just drop in the character and it'll just work, and then the meshes can be interchanged, different clothes, and all the rest of it. And that was just a very simple, does this work? Because I can go into that character, I can change the t-shirt for a robe, for example, and it stays rigged. But the result of which is the animation is very, very simple. So when you're running, your feet aren't really matching the motion that you're doing.
Yeah, again, really an alpha asset. The purpose of that asset was, can we swap out top, bottom, and everything stay together so that you can really whip through different character setups quickly. And of course, in our true fashion, we just ran with it for the rest of the stuff.
Yep. How do you create an in-game debug setting? It depends what you want it to do, really, but I would put a key binding in that opens a menu that has access to a bunch of debug features, which could be anything from spawn mob to change time of day to drink coffee.
Oh, that's an important one. Or an even more important one, find Mikey's coffee.
Yep. But anything that's in the Godot engine, I believe, is open to the code. Like, the Godot engine that we're using is a Godot game. Everything in there can be accessed. And when you're writing a script, if you write the keyword tool at the beginning of a script, it'll apply in editor rather than in game, or both if you wanted to apply in both. So there's a lot of versatility there. Like, in theory, you could bring in all of those performance things into the game. Although
that's
I haven't
awesome.
Never done that. It feels like we're coming up to the wrapping up time.
It does. We've been going for far longer than usual.
We have. So yeah, go check out the Go Godot Jam, which is in that web page I posted a little earlier. Boop.
It's been lovely having you all here, whether you're old or new.
And Mikey may just say you're looking fantastic. This is the best I've ever seen you look.
Yes.
I did threaten to replace Mikey with a puppet today, so that when he was talking, you guys would have something to look at.
I am disappointed you didn't, to be honest.
I am too. So yeah, we'll be back in a couple of days. We're going to talk about grid maps. Well, I will. Mikey's probably going to be doing something else.
I'll probably drop in.
Fantastic! I'm glad that you'll be in there.
I've got my inoculation, my jab on Wednesday morning, so I don't even know how I'll be feeling Wednesday evening.
And Wednesday, we typically play Divinity Original Sin, but we're not playing this week. And I'm trying to pack because I'm actually moving house. So I'll probably do that during the day on Wednesday. Nice. Thank you guys for joining us. Do check out our Discord and our community. Thank you, Adrian, for setting all this up. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Dragon Puppet. I'm running out of things, Michael.
It's time to say goodbye.
It's time to play the music.
No.
Yeah. Reach out to us on Facebook if you have any questions. Reach out to us on Discord if you have any questions. There's some great 2D stuff out there. I'm really looking forward to some of the other partners' streams as well. I learned a lot watching the Unreal devs just opening Godot for the first time and looking at it, because you kind of forget when you use a tool for a while what it's like for a first-time user. But yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic Monday, if it's still Monday where you are. Drive home safe, and don't forget your complimentary drinks at the bar.
Nice.
Bye.
Bye. I can't believe